It's an interesting one because copper is anyway tight, and the massive demand that we are expecting, principally from the revolution that is happening in the space of artificial intelligence is definitely raising the bar and increasing the pressure, because there's a demand pull going on that is really making a difference. That's definitely copper, because copper is the one metal that really is critical when it comes to electrification. It has unique characteristics in terms of conductivity, so everything that has to do with the transmission and the distribution of power, definitely copper is the one to look. That's an interesting one because copper is anyway tight, and the massive demand that we are expecting, principally from the revolution that is happening in the space of artificial intelligence is definitely raising the bar and increasing the pressure, because there's a demand pull going on that is really making a difference. Well, we have a very 360 view on the companies, so clearly classic fundamental analysis is important. It's a very asset-heavy industry, so we pay a lot of attention to the amount of capex that goes into the deposit and the development of mines. However, these companies sometimes operate in very exotic locations, so you have to pay attention also to the direct neighborhood, also to the political regime these companies find themselves in. So all this is very important, not to ignore the ESG factors clearly. So all the stakeholders involved, if there's competition for water, which is a very common thing. So all this is part of our analysis, and definitely we pay a very close eye and a lot of attention to when we pick our stocks that make it into the portfolio. Yeah, so it's an interesting one because clearly mining has this appeal to be cyclical and to be reliant on Chinese, in particular, real estate growth. With electrification taking such a strong importance, and also AI really making a difference, potentially also EVs really taking a larger share of the transportation industry. So I guess metals and mining space is having a structural demand driver with electrification, which is changing the appeal for investments in the metals and mining space. For smart energy, clearly it's similar, but it has a clear focus on the electrification, and it's more about the enabling products and services for certain problems, for certain electrification issues. So that is something that has a slightly different tilt, and both have their own advantages, but of course it's slightly different in terms of the focus for both of the products. Yeah, so for the critical metals, it's quite new that we find ourselves in a deglobalized world. So it used to be a very globalized setup where it was just about the price. So everything was available, and now it's actually a different setup because some market participants, they control wide range of the supply chain, and they use this as a weapon, you could say, on something to impose their will on the other side. So China, US is definitely something that is currently coming to mind when it comes to rare earth. So that is something that has changed the landscape of the sheer focus on supply demand, because there's a geopolitical argument also to be made in this. Yeah, and starting into 2026, we have seen a very strong upward trend in actually all the metals that actually led to a very high level of valuation metrics for most of the pure copper miners. We have seen a correction, following what happened in the Middle East and the Iran war. So we actually see interesting opportunities in that field, because that is clearly a structural theme that is pulling, and that is exerting a lot of demand going forward. At least that's what we expect. And currently we see valuations that have moderated to a level that is actually more interesting from our current perspective. Yeah, as I said, AI is definitely the one trend which is definitely changing the landscape because the need for power is so high. We already see in the US that the prices for electricity, are extremely high, and that is in turn a problem for the Trump administration. Affordability is something that is definitely becoming an issue for the US. Most likely the same thing will happen here in Europe or in Asia. On top, that's the Iran war, which is further aggravating this crisis that we already see on the power side. Definitely what's coming also is EVs. We actually have a revolution on the battery side. So we have CATL, the Chinese battery champion, I would call it, with a new technology which is putting range anxiety aside. So you have more than, let's say, 800, 900 kilometers range. So that is basically something that we can all deal with. Going down the highway, and you will recharge in a couple of minutes. So that is really a game changer for EVs, which in turn might create a lot of demand for commodities going forward.